So I think I'm right in assuming that most of you watching these videos are not living in a monastery, and so are to some extent or another balancing your practice with work, with like a job of some kind, a career, maybe school, maybe also family, friends, social engagements. Like, we live in the world, not the monastery. If you are a monastic and you're watching these videos, thank you. But it's always been a part of my practice to figure out how it fits. What is it to be a householder, a lay practitioner? And I should get across right away that I'm now firmly convinced that enlightenment, sort of the deepest levels of realization, are just as accessible to us in the midst of our non-monastic lifestyle as it is to those who focus within the monastery. It's different, certainly different flavors. I was going to say different rules and regulations, but here's the thing that I'm very interested in right now, and I can look back over the last 30 years and can see how it's been an interest of mine. We can apply discipline and routine and rules and regulations. We can apply a sutra to being a householder just as much as we can apply a sutra to living in a monastery, right? Precepts and rules and regulations. We can apply transformation, like Tantra. We can apply energy to our careers and our external work just as much as if we were secluded in a cabin or a retreat somewhere, a cave. And we can certainly experience natural state regardless of the content of the world around us. It's just maybe a little bit easier to be distracted, perhaps, or perhaps it's just differently distracted. The mind is distractible, whether that is in a monastic cell with a wall that has patterns on it, or whether it's in an office working with a team of 50 people writing software, and all of the anxiety and stress that comes along with things like that. So I thought what I would do is kind of walk through at sort of a decade by decade block of time how I now think about how I was thinking about the balance between career and practice. And what did I mean by practice and what did I mean by career? And kind of map out what I think of as a trajectory. Part of that understanding today is that it's a trajectory that I understand today, and that in 10 years from now, all going well, and I'm still here to think it through, everything I say now will seem as naive as what I thought 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But with that, let me tell you how I have thought throughout my life about that balance, and maybe it resonates with what you're experiencing right now. So just to start with, I'm 50-something years old, 55-ish, which seems extraordinary because I still remember what it was like to be 25 and starting a PhD program in music composition and having some interest in sort of in New Age practices. That was, I was interested in tarot, and I was interested in sort of Golden Dawn practices, and I got some experience with that in my 20s. And I was in a PhD program, which I didn't finish. So my 20s were just sort of lacking in focus in both my work. An unfinished PhD is the definition of lack of focus, right? But also in practice, right? I wasn't studying with a teacher. I wasn't practicing Buddhism. I was exploring a lot and being exposed to a lot of different types of groups and different types of practices. And fair enough, that's not a bad way to spend your 20s. Then in my 30s, I made the decision that I wasn't going to finish my PhD. I had started a temp job at the company I work at now, which is a very large financial institution. A temp job, literally stuffing diskettes into an envelope and sending them out to clients for their software upgrade, because this was in 1994-ish. Predates the internet. Which is also astonishing to think about. But I've basically taken that job as a temp stuffing envelopes and turned it into today, where I have a pretty good position. I'm as a program manager in the bank. So then in my 30s is when I first started to take practice a bit more seriously. Again, still flitting around, but I went and sat with some Zen groups. I didn't know of any Tibetan groups, but by the end of my 30s, I had started to get interested in Tibetan practices. But so here's the thing: when I stopped my PhD, I was profoundly demoralized. I stopped writing, and writing and my practice are kind of have been intertwined, right? So I was dabbling around with some meditation. I was working a job that I really didn't think I should be doing, didn't want to be doing it. And I considered the two absolutely separate, and with kind of a wall of resentment between them, that, if my life were different or better, I would not have to be doing this job at this company. Even though I was no longer stuffing envelopes, I'd taken a little bit of programming, some Visual Basic, like 6 weeks of Visual Basic, which back then was enough to get a job as a developer. And then within a couple of years realized I was more suited to analysis and project management, and so I started doing that. But still, the model of that first decade was resentment and absolutely strict compartmentalization, right? Like, the time I spent at work was brittle. I resented it. I liked getting paid, but I wasn't making a ton of money. And I felt that it was taking away from what I should be doing, which was writing. But I wasn't writing because I was demoralized from not having finished my PhD. And because I'm lazy, right? And kind of been a little bit of a fuck up. So then my 30s passed, and now I entered into my 40s. I told you this was very high level, right? But it's high level in a way that I think is sort of traditional, right? Like, traditional teaching has you as a child, then an adult, as a family man, and a householder, and then the final third of your life, the children are grown up, family, and then you focus on meditation, perhaps go on long retreats and prepare for death. So I think it's okay to think in terms of decades. So let's say through my 40s, I shifted gears a bit, in the sense that there was no point in me resenting the time I spent at work, and why not bring some charisma and some energy and some focus to it? And I did, and I started to generate a virtuous loop there. I got some promotions. I zigged and zagged, but ended up gradually moving into positions that were interesting and absorbing. And my practice in the same way. That in my 40s is when I met Tempa, who is my teacher now, and started to make some connections to the Bon practice. But still separate, right? Maybe not blocked by a wall of resentment, but thinking of trying to bring myself into these different compartments, but they're still different compartments. I started writing again, realized that I was a much more rank amateur composer than I wanted to be. Still, Today, maybe I feel a bit more confident in my writing, but it's been 10 years, right? This is the time that I had met Lowry, and a lot of this shift happened with that friendship, and the mentorship I received from him was to sort of reignite my interest in living in some ways, I guess, right? Work and writing and meditation. Look, I've talked about this a bit before, but I mean, that entire time I was drinking a lot. So although I was making progress, I wasn't making the progress that perhaps I could have been if I hadn't been drinking quite so much. So my 40s went by. I wrestled with some health issues that I'm doing okay with, but then I entered into my 50s, and the shift in my 50s, along with, it's almost 2 years now since I last had a drink, and even for the 5 years before that, I knew I needed to cut back, but it's not unusual to recognize that and take years and years before actually doing anything about it, particularly if you were drinking in the way that I was, which was a bit problematic. But with that, and with some opening up and some stabilization within my practice, the idea of this compartmentalization started to fade, and that with a stable approach and with a kind of an authentic understanding of the self and the mind, the content of that experience, whether it's working in the office, whether it's writing, whether it's meditation, the content is secondary to the approach that I bring to it. I mean, this is, I think, what the chop wood, carry water before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water after enlightenment means. The action is the same. There's nothing romantic about chopping wood and carrying water. It's a pain in the ass. Nobody wants to do it. And the same way nobody really wants to sit at a desk and lead meetings with cantankerous stakeholders, right? But the way that we approach that, recognizing it as phenomena, recognizing it as form and feeling and the aggregates, that is practice, right? And then choosing to move forward with justice and wisdom and compassion, whether that's in the field of these videos or the teaching that I'm now starting to do at the temple, or my writing, or the work that I do at the bank, my relationships with my family, with my friends. Those things that were previously compartments and previously rigidly split compartments are now things that emerge from this sort of spontaneous being. That at least is the intent, right? When that doesn't happen, when I find myself resenting the time I spend at work, or being irritated, or feeling ashamed or negative about my writing or my practice, that's a moment to recognize distraction. It's a moment to recognize the intrusion of the small mind. It's a constriction, right? And it's a chance to let go of that constriction. Still, we need a sense of the self to go to Starbucks and order coffee, or to write a document, or to lead a meeting, or to teach, or to produce a video. But recognition that it is a construct and not a permanent entity, right? It's a momentary alignment that is useful. But then, like the body and the other momentary alignments that last more or less time, they can be let go. And that's where my practice is right now. Focus on maintaining sobriety, right? Focus on doing well at work. I've got 8 years left before I retire. That's my plan. I want those 8 years to be honest and authentic, and to do something. I work with people. And, so 20 years ago, the resentment I felt about showing up and working, I no longer hold that. I occasionally feel a bit put upon, underappreciated. I struggle with pride. I struggle with the sense of ego entitlement. But that's part of my practice, right? That's part of my awareness. And the approach isn't to sort of funnel in good parts of me into those actions. It's to see all of that as sort of the unfolding dance of energy, onto which I bring the skills that I need for a particular moment, but all coming from the same wellspring of energy. That's the intent. It's a challenge, right? Practice is difficult. Practice has obscurations and distractions, and it's easy to get wrapped up during a long work day with the slights and insults that come my way every day, and to turn those around and offer up slights and insults when what I really want to do is offer up direction and clarity and just sort of general good humor and enthusiasm, recognizing that at the end of it, 10 years from now, so the next chunk, I won't be doing this anymore. I'll be retired. And each of those, my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, feel as if they were yesterday. 8 years is going to go by like that, right? And then if the objective for my practice is twofold, right? It is to prepare myself for the next phase of mortality, whatever that is, whenever that is, and it is to cultivate that as an offering to everybody around me, whether that's through these videos or through Dharma teaching at Omo Ling, whether it's through what I write, music or essays or books. Everything has to line up against that essential intention, and if it doesn't, then it's probably constrained ego. Right. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about all of that. Those intentions are exactly the same as if I would say I'm going on a 3-year retreat. Like I'm on an 8-year retreat, and that 8-year retreat will end the day I retire. At which point I will integrate into another phase of life. That's how I want to think about it. But it's been a challenge, a step, right? Every step of the way, I have not been there, and I don't know where I'll be in 10 years. But wherever you're at, it's probably something similar. Maybe between the resentment or the funneled compartmentalization or the general sort of authentic sense, and then whatever comes after that. You have to let me know. So, anyway, it's a Saturday afternoon. It's my wife's birthday this week. It was her birthday a few weeks ago, and we're having a party tonight. There's going to be about 50 people here, I think, which is about 48 more than I'm kind of really prepared for. So it's going to be great. It's going to be a fun party. And then we're on vacation for a week. I'm going to post from Ithaca, New York, which is where we're going for the week. So that will be my next video. But in the meantime, please drop a comment, a question in the video, or email, or however you want to tag me. But keep your wits about you.